All right. Now this is the last thing before we officially get started. I have my favorite Canadian story ever. So I went up to a school district. Unfortunately, it was not Ottawa. This was way back in the early days of my experience at Book Creator. I drove into Canada, and here in the States, every exit has a sign, and it usually says Taco Bell, Burger King, Starbucks, gas station, hotel, like whatever. That's like on every sign as you go through an exit. But when I get to Canada, I'm coming up on my first exit after I get in Canada, and all
Yeah.
I see is the sign, and it just has like 5 golf courses listed. And I was
Uh,
like, this is the right place. And then I go to the next exit, and it's like 3 more golf courses. Not one sign about Burger King, but tons of signs about golf courses. So I was like, I might be in the wrong country. I might be living in the wrong place. That
well,
was that
John,
was
you're always welcome. You're always welcome here in our nation's capital.
we'll definitely get up there one of these days. So all right. Well, welcome everybody to our webinar. It is 4:01, so we are going to go ahead and get started. And I am thrilled to have this webinar today. One, because I don't have to talk. It's going to be mostly my friends, Alexa and Julian, who are going to be doing all the talking. But I am so excited about this, and I will let Alexa and Julian really kind of jump in here and talk about this. But for those of you that don't know, my name is John Smith. I am the Senior Teacher Success Manager here at Book Creator. So lots of webinars, trainings, conferences, keynotes, school visits, basically anything I can do to help your teachers and schools best utilize their licenses. That's what I'm here for. But I know that none of you are here to see me today. You are here to see my friends, Alexa and Julian, from Ottawa Catholic School Board up in Canada. And a little bit of background that I want to give is that you were one of our first like major customers here at Book Creator. And it started all way back with like 12 teachers using Book Creator, and that was kind of it. And now it has bloomed into, let me look at it today, 4,000 plus teachers using Book Creator. And as of today, the analytics are still loading because it's so much, right?
They're
Like we
probably finishing up their last books as we speak, John.
they
It's the end of the
probably
school
are.
day here.
But I think in the description for the webinar, we said 400,000 plus books. And I know that it's more than that. So as soon as that finishes loading, I'll actually put that stat into the chat window. But it is a bunch. And so we are super excited to have you here talking today. And so I'll let both of you just kind of go ahead and introduce yourselves, and we'll go from there. And Julian's going to share a screen. And like I said, we're just going to take it from there. So sit tight, everybody. Enjoy the ride, and we'll have some fun. All right.
Julian,
All you, Julian, but you're muted.
Hello? Now you're muted, John.
There we go.
Can you see my screen?
Absolutely.
Okay. This is really weird because we're not used to doing it on Zoom. Before we introduce ourselves, we just in Ottawa and in our nation's capital and in Canada, we are on Indigenous territory, and just as part of starting the sessions right and knowing that we are joining everybody virtually this evening. That said, we are joining virtually on Algonquin territory here in our nation's capital. So just to start off, and to let everybody know, as we do gather here today, we take a moment to acknowledge the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin peoples. This land holds immense historical, cultural, and spiritual significance for the Indigenous peoples, and we want to express our gratitude and respect for their stewardship of this land for thousands of years. Additionally, we recognize and honor the diverse gender identities, including Two-Spirit individuals, who have always been a vital part of the rich history and culture of this land. We pay tribute to their strength, resilience, and contributions to society, and pledge to continue the work towards reconciliation and inclusiveness for all. So now, with that said, I'm going to pass it over to my wonderful colleague Alexa to introduce herself and get started.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Hi, my name is Alexa Desjardins, and I am currently a grade 6 French immersion teacher here at the Ottawa Catholic School Board. I have taught grades K to 6 except for 3. So I have a pretty wide gamut in terms of grades that I've used. Book Creator, I've used them in all of those aspects and all of those grades, and it lends itself beautifully to any grade. I had the pleasure of working with Julian for several years in the junior division, so grades 4 to 6, which is where you'll hear about our project in the next, I guess, few minutes. But yeah, that's it for me. So grade 6 currently, French immersion. So that's also a little tidbit to keep in mind that I'm doing this in French, typically with my students. And yeah, I'll pass it over to Julian.
Thank you, Madame Alexa. So for any of our US friends that are watching, in Canada, obviously we have 2 official languages, English and French. And certainly in our nation's capital, being Ottawa, French is one of the languages that is taught in 2 different pathways across our system. So both Madame Alexa and I were French teachers. I'll introduce myself now. My name is Julian Daher, and like Alexa was saying, I was a French teacher for almost 10 years, and when I last year, just after the pandemic happened, I had been hired into a system position here at the school board, where I'm now a learning technologies consultant for the our K-12 panel. So it's been really, really enriching and interesting, and such a roller coaster of all of the feels. And it's for Book Creator and the inception in our school board from day one. I can remember when Alex and I were both in the same school, as we were co-teachers and partners. We had our classrooms side by side, and we co-taught every day. And it was just around that time that Book Creator was in its early days with our school board, with our school district. And it really opened up the realm of possibilities for us. And I know that today's theme is everyone is a writer and everyone can be a writer. And Book Creator really makes that happen. And I know in our session today, there might be some questions that come up in the chat. But before, John, we have a little video that kind of inspired us to do the work that we did. But I just kind of wanted to pass it back to Alexa to really showcase and convey how Book Creator was utilized in a French language learning environment, but how students used both English and French, and how both of those languages supported the development in and of each other, and especially within our multilingual language learners. Alexa, what's your experience? Or I know you and I have extensive experience together, but as a French teacher, knowing that English is our first language, how would you say that's been adopted in your practice?
So I would just say, first and foremost, that Book Creator is extremely, with a capital E, user-friendly. It is. And I don't just mean that for teachers, I mean that especially for students. I find that as a teacher, whenever there's new technologies that are being released to us, the first thing we ask ourselves is not about how we can use it. It makes no difference how we can use it. It's, can the kids use it? Are there several entry points? And is there an ease? Is it easy to adopt? Is it easy, and not just adopt, but is it really easy to make it your own? Is there flexibility? Is there options? And I think that's what Book Creator is really good at doing, and has continued to release features throughout the years from its inception to now that have really honed in on accessibility, on speech, on images, on all kinds of things. And it's made it really, really, really easy and honestly really fun for students to use and to really see themselves as writers, because isn't that the point of it? The point of it is for students, whether they are excellent writers or emergent writers, to see themselves as published writers, because that's the point, is guess what? You're a writer now. You can publish your work and you can call yourself an author. And I think that is the beauty of it. And there's a real empowerment that comes along with using Book Creator with just a few clicks, or if you're using an iPad, it's just a few taps that really make it extremely user-friendly for the students, extremely empowering, engaging. The engagement level is outstanding. And in terms of also devices, you know, it can be used. We're a school board that is Google based, so we're usually operating out of Chromebooks. But for our younger students who are in early learning, so a kindergarten, so that could be a 3.5-year-old to a 6-year-old, they're more likely to be using iPads. So that app, as we know, or maybe some of you don't know yet, but that app, it's both a web-based browser, but also an app. So it's really lends itself to different devices. And in terms of the French lens, it's just as easy to write, to type in French as it is to type in English, right? So you really can do any language, and it supports that beautifully. And you know what? There's just a million functions I could go on and on and on about that support multilingual learners and writers.
And I think what's fascinating too is that the transition, right? I think that you had in your beginning stages, right? So I put a link in the chat window there to a partner spotlight that we did on Ottawa back in 2020, which seems so far away, right? From so long ago. But it was all based on the fact that as a school board, you really truly believed in voice, right? And giving students a voice, giving them choice and the ability to share their stories, right? And I think, Alexa, what you're saying is that right when it came on, I'm speaking for you. I immediately saw this ability for my students to now use French or English or both, to tell their stories, right? And to be able to become those writers of material. And I think that's what's very powerful, whether you teach French or whether you teach special ed or whether you teach anything, right? You have the ability to have your kids become published authors and share content, right? Great, amazing content. I did also want to take again, housekeeping real quick. I see a couple of hands being raised, a couple little emoji hands being tossed up there. We do not have audio turned on for all of our attendees. So if you do have questions, please put those into the chat window or put them into the Q&A box. I'm monitoring both. So as Alexa and Julian are going through this today, I'm always happy to answer questions or interrupt them and say, hey, we got some clarifying questions we got to have answered. So anyway, I'll let you all keep going. But I think it's a really neat story to see, right? Is how we went from where we were all the way to where we are now. And I'm still trying to, they finished loading. As of today, just over 4,000 teachers are using Book Creator. 17,000 libraries have been created. 56.7 thousand students have been affected by Book Creator, and 465,000 books have been made, which puts you right at the top of our worldwide leaders of Book Creator books that have been made. So big round of applause.
Wow.
Phenomenal.
So, John, I know those are impressive numbers, I have to say. And for anyone watching, John's not paying us. Like we're paid teachers that love our day jobs. But I wanted to give a little bit of context from the learning technologies perspective of things. And it might seem lofty, like how on earth were you able to scale this tool and have the adoption of this tool become so successful across our entire system? It's funny, John just said that there are about 52 or 56,000 students that used it. And that just speaks to the testament of now our board has 47,000 students. So we know that graduated students that are that as well, right? Oh, can you hear me?
Yep, there we go.
Okay. So we have over, I don't know where I left off, but I was saying that John had said, we're at 52,000 or 53,000 students using Book Creator. Our district right now, we currently serve 47,000 students. So it just goes to show that there have been books created even by our graduates that have left, and knowing that it just continues to go and grow, right? So a little bit about the Ottawa Catholic School Board's scaling system. So when we're talking about a tool like Book Creator, when I wish I was part of the team in our department now when we initially met John and worked with John. I wasn't. I was in the classroom on the front lines using the tool. But at that time, as an end user of Book Creator, I was actually a part of, I was sent a Google form from our school board, from our learning technologies department, saying, hey, we're trying out this new tool. It's web-based, it's browser-based, it works with Google Chrome, as we're a Google school board, and fill out this Google form if you want to have a license from now until the end of the school year. And at that time, there were a handful. I mean, when I say a handful, we're a district of 47,000 students and about 3,000 teachers, and we also have educators and non-affiliated staff that aren't a part of that group, so it's quite large. But all of that being said is that there were a cluster of us that initially adopted Book Creator in its early days, myself and Alexa being one of them. And I remember at the time the Learning Technologies Department said, all right, if you signed up for Book Creator this year, let us know how it went. We gave feedback, we talked about how much we liked it, we talked about things that we wanted to see change. But most importantly, what everyone noticed immediately was the multiple entry points that it provided for all learners. Like, hands down, it was solving so many differentiation concerns, problems, innovate. Like it really leveled the playing field for so many students. I think the tool, fast forwarding into how we scaled this across our system, the feedback was just so great that we ended up purchasing, paying for enough licenses to support our entire district. Now, in doing that, it means that an icon or a thumbnail is made accessible to all of our teachers across our system on the staff portal. And maybe they would know it's there, maybe it's not. But we have a very active school board, and in our department, we were really intentional with, all right, we're paying this amount of money for Book Creator right now. How are we going to build capacity? So within our board and within our framework of how we roll out system-wide initiatives, we have learning partners, we have consultants, we have itinerant staff. So when we meet with those staff centrally at the school board level and say, all right, this is a tool that we're using, this is a tool that we're pushing, here's what it does, here's the language connection, here's the math connection, here's the multi-language learner connection, and so on and so forth. When those teachers who are boots on the ground across our system visiting schools with classroom embedded support, they're the ones that are actually able to show the classroom teacher and the students what the tool does, and have a little bit of a gradual release of responsibility with, you know, we've trained the trainer, now the trainer's going into the classroom, modeling how this would be used with students so that teachers in the classroom can see it without necessarily having to facilitate the session. They're learning and they're leading with their students, alongside their students. And the adoption rate became so successful and so quick and so rapid because they saw the immediate ease of use for the end user, being the student, and the innovation that continues with Book Creator. I mean, listen, we talk with John frequently as a district, and we give John like the honest feedback of what we want to see. And we're paying big bucks, obviously, to make sure that our students have access to this. But Book Creator has delivered and continues to, in terms of that accessibility piece. I know I'm going on a tangent right now, I don't mean to, but just on that level of special education and inclusion, during the pandemic, I taught a class with varying special education needs, solely special education needs. It was not a regular unsupported classroom. It was a high needs special education class, systems class, we would call it. And I had students that were in a developmentally education program, students that were nonverbal autism spectrum disorder, students that had either a mild intellectual disability, an intellectual disability, a learning disability, that were either deaf, blind, or hard of hearing. So the needs in that class that year were beyond measure. But when I was able to use Book Creator to get the voice of a student who was on a medium level of functioning on the autism spectrum, who was able to complete a 5-finger retell of a story and talk about the characters, talk about the setting, talk about first, middle, and last events, and use her voice while doing it, was a game changer. And not because she completed the assignment, but because the sense of pride and accomplishment and fulfillment that made her feel like an author at the end of that period. So again, this was where you're talking about differentiation, whether or not you have a class like that, like a systems class, or you have a quote unquote regular class. I do not like using that word at all. We know that we have at-risk students and students with special and varying educational needs. Book Creator, again, we're not getting paid for this, is something that levels the playing field. So I'm just going to pass the torch a little bit to Alexa if John doesn't have to say anything. But Alexa and I did a really special project together back when we were co-teaching at St. Benedict Catholic School. And this had more of a focus with the English language learners, and specifically students that were in a French immersion program that had culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. So Alexa, did you want to give a little preface to that? Because I feel like
I want to jump in real quick though, before
yes.
You said so many great things there, Julian. I think a couple of things that I really took away from that are things that I really talk about a lot myself as a former special ed teacher. One, you mentioned differentiation. And I think that in the grand scheme of things, all the teachers I've talked to over the years, we say things like differentiation, right? And it's kind of like, well, we'll go to a workshop and we'll learn about it. But a lot of times we don't really know what that really means, right? I think, and we're kind of like, is this differentiation? I don't really know. And one of the things that I have quickly realized, and my 5-year-old is standing next to me, so I'm going to actually use her as an example, is that I think Book Creator is very self-differentiating. Mm-hmm. So as a student, right, when I get a tool like this and I'm told, what the assignment is or what I might get to do for creativity or whatever, I can choose parts of Book Creator that highlight my strengths, and I can actually really make myself shine. So my 5-year-old, who's not able to really use the keyboard, she's doing really good at spelling, but there's things she can't spell. She can use the audio button and she can just record her voice, right? Or if my daughter, who's 9, can type, she'll start typing and she'll do everything fine. But if she gets to a word that she doesn't know, then she's like, hits the microphone and speaks it and says, and then it puts it there for her. And these are all things that they're doing on their own, right? I'm not telling them that they can do this. I'd say, hey, here's Book Creator, do your project, whatever. And they're figuring it kind of out, right? Which is really cool. And the other thing I think is important is, that idea of voice, right? So I think a lot of times, when you talk to students, especially if they're in, on the autism spectrum or if they're in the special ed classroom or whatever, there's this conception, this mindset that they don't know certain things. And it reminds me of this video called The Myth of Average. And in this video, the guy basically says that there's a kid, his name is Billy, and he is a below average reader, but he loves science. But when he gets to science is first and foremost a reading class because the book is written slightly above grade level. So he fails at that science piece because it's reading, but he has a mind for science. And we might lose that kid. He might have the cure for cancer in his brain, but because he has to read, it's a problem. But with something like Book Creator, speech to text, audio buttons, videos, there's lots of ways you can get what's in your brain out into a book format to kind of highlight and share all of the amazing stuff. So, all right. So anyway, Alexa, that was my piece. Alexa, go for it. I'm going to take off my video for a second so my daughter can.
I forgot Julian's question, to be honest. I was just listening to you talk, and I just completely agree with everything you say. And I think the word that stands out to me is just empowerment. I think that's what the kids are left with, is they're just left with a sense of empowerment, of I can do this. I can record my voice. I can write a book. I can become an author. I can put my ideas out there. As you say, this kid might have the cure for cancer in his brain, but you know, if he's stumped on how to spell or if he's stumped on how to read, well, there are a million features that are not only there, but super easy to use, so that when you're working as a teacher with somebody else, you don't have to worry about sitting next to the student and helping them figure out all the buttons and tools. No. You put the device in their hands. You might want to show them like a quick 2-second model of how to use it. And then they fly with it. They figure it out. There's a plus button. It's really intuitive. So, you know, it's just really easy to use. And regardless of the student profile, whether they have a special need, whether they have a language, I don't want to use the word barrier because it's not a barrier, but if they're working in a separate language, or if they're coming at it with a certain set of skills, regardless, they can be successful using this tool. And I think that's the biggest part that Julian and I have seen over and over and over again, is you can sort of count on that feeling of accomplishment, regardless of the subject, the project, you name it, they can do it.
So kind of going into what Alexa said, I'll summarize briefly just because I am cognizant of time. When Alexa and I were teaching grade 4 and grade 5 French immersion classes in 2018, we were teaching in an area of the city that was very multicultural. It was a suburban neighborhood, and there was varying demographics. And what was really interesting is the misconception that students who speak another language at home as their maternal language, other than English or French, that have like their own, you know, culturally and linguistically diverse language as their mother tongue. The misconception is that these students don't succeed in a French language environment and can never measure up or get to the same level as their peers who are their Canadian-born counterparts, who either speak English and or French as their first or second language. So we're just trying to lay the foundation with you, saying that there are students, obviously, with families that immigrated to Canada that were in a French immersion stream. And what we decided to do as partner teachers was a piece of work based on a Canadian researcher at the University of Toronto named Jim Cummins. And Jim Cummins has actually spent the last 40 years researching and working with multilingual learners across the world. But what's really interesting about Jim Cummins is that he coined this term called identity texts. So what an identity text is that oftentimes, and we can use multilingual learners as our example, but this actually can be spread into gender, into identity, into belief, whatever it might be. For this specific piece, identity is a bit of a broad term, but we're looking at it specifically with the cultural and linguistic lens. So how can we create a book? Our guiding question was, how can we create a book that serves as a mirror that positively reflects the identity of each learner in our classroom? So in Canada, books are made in English or French, right? You can buy a book in English, you can buy a book in French. Of course, there are translated texts, but when you go to Indigo or Chapters or wherever, you can count on having English or French. In our Learning Commons, we had that same thing. But Alexa and I both had a class of over 30 students each, and we said, holy moly, I wonder how many students we have in our class that speak a different language as their first language, as their native language at home, other than English or French. And we both realized that it was about 30 to 40% of our classes had students embedded within that did not speak English or French as their mother tongue, as their native language. And we said, okay, wait a second. This is really interesting. When you're thinking about those students, when you're thinking about culture, when you're thinking about bringing your lunch to school even, and it's not the same as your Canadian-born counterpart, you automatically feel different. If you have a last name that's not, no offense, John, Smith, or Raymond, right? They say, what is that? Where are you from? And it creates this dichotomy, right, of us versus them, or you're not from here, or you're different, and not in a negative way by any means. Of course, that does unfortunately happen, but more so in a, you're not like me, so where are you from and why are you different? So both Alex and I, who are social justice activists and want to make sure that we're doing right by all of our students, said, you know, we want to take Jim Cummins' work and really empower that student and those students who do speak a different language at home other than English or French as their first language, and put them on center stage. And it was, you know, we had to talk to our principal about it, who was obviously very supportive. But the essence of the experience was two questions. One was, how can we show our school, make a book about our school to a newcomer that's coming that doesn't speak English or French? And that was my class in grade 4. And in Alexa's class in grade 5 was, how can we talk and explain Canada, but writing it in 3 different languages, in English, French, and a third language. Same with me. I was explaining what the school looked like in English, French, and a third language.
Julian, can I jump in for a second?
Yeah, jump in, please.
Okay, so to add on to this, there were several layers as well, because in both Julian's class in grade 4 and my class in grade 5, we both taught a grade 4 class and we both taught a grade 5 class. So in total, there's 4 groups of kids going on. But what ended up happening was Julian had a student in grade 4 and I had a student in grade 5, I believe, or maybe it was the opposite, who didn't speak a word of English, let alone a word of French. So they're entering our school, my student spoke only Arabic, and you know, he's going to school and there's not one text in the school that he can read in his own language. And you know, he had just moved to Canada. So it's like, there's that empathy piece where you're thinking, how is the student going to feel A, welcome, B, successful, C, see themselves you know, we're talking about mirrors, see themselves as a valued member and as a celebrated member of the school community and of Canada, right? So that sort of prompted us with the data that we had gathered of who were multilingual learners. It sort of prompted us to say, okay, can we not only put them center stage, but can we have students, or can we create books that are made by students, written by students for students, and actually publish, because that is a feature in Book Reader where you can publish the book when you're finished and it becomes public to the world, and you have the options to print and whatever else. And we thought, wouldn't it be special not only to have it online, but to actually print them and put them as a text that would be accessible to other students. So for my student who was solely Arabic speaking, he could then be placed center stage, have a sense of empowerment. Oh, I've authored a book, but also I've now created a book for someone else who will be in my position, maybe in a month, maybe next year, maybe 3 years from now, who will also have moved from another country speaking only Arabic. And so what ended up happening is that this was several years ago. Julian said 2018. We're now 5 years later, and that has since happened. I'm still at the same school, and I have since had students who speak these languages, and I say, oh, give me a second, and I pull out the books and I show them the books. And there's the grade 4 that is focused on Welcome to St. Benedict, and it talks to you about what the school is about, where can you find certain things. And then the grade 5 version is Welcome to Canada. And then you start getting into culture, languages, traditions, monuments, geographical locations, right? So it's really empowering when you have these, and I think Julian's about to show one. I can see him sharing his screen. So it's just, that part was really, really special to see them not only be valued members amongst their own peers, but then to see their work being published and being used by other students as well to learn from.
I couldn't have said it better. I love this idea of legacy, right? And a lot of times when kids graduate school and they leave and you ask them, you're like, what did you leave behind? And they're like, gum under the desk. Like, what do you mean? What did I leave behind? Right? And you're like, no, well, where's the work, right? What have you done to benefit yourself? But also in this situation, what have you done to benefit other people? Right, which I think is really fascinating, right? That's the thing that I really love. And so the other thing that is kind of nice about this is kind of like the endless like cycle that just keeps on giving, right? So you've got one student who says, there's no Arabic books, so I'm going to make one, right? I'm going to be an author of this awesome Arabic book, and I'm going to put it in the library or in the classroom or whatever. And then another kid comes in and goes, well, I speak Arabic. There's not any books in here for me, I bet, right? And you're like, haha, not true, right? Check this out. And then that kid goes, this is pretty sweet, but I think I can do better, right? And so then it just starts this cycle where it's like, now we're going to have piles and piles of books in different languages, right, to welcome all of these children. So absolutely love this idea. Yeah, or maybe students who have been in the school district longer was a comment that was added into the chat window. They can make books for others, for languages, for newcomers. Yeah, absolutely. So just many.
And that's been the ripple effect, is that there have been entire libraries created by students for other students. And it's really interesting too, when we look at the piece of collaboration and leadership, it's really easy. We talk about ease of use. It's really easy to create a library, A, B, invite kids to it, C, have them collaborate. And the next thing you know, you have an entire library created by, let's say, grade 6s, grade 3s, grade 4s, doesn't matter. And then they release that library to younger students. It could be students of same age, but it's really powerful when, you have a kindergarten student read a book that was published by someone in their school, but better yet, have a book that was written by a grade 6 student in tandem with the kindergarten student. So now we're talking about modeling that behavior. And now we're talking about, oh my gosh, I'm a 4-year-old in kindergarten and I've just worked next to my reading buddy in grade 5 or grade 6 or whatever grade. And together we've written this book.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is really powerful.
100%. Julian, just FYI, your screen is all black on my end. So I don't know if we're missing.
Okay, hold on one second. I will reshare. So I'll going into this. So before
there we go.
Right. So before I actually start showing you the book, let's keep in mind that this was in 2018 when some really cool features of Book Reader weren't even out yet. So you might see this book and be like, whoa, why isn't it like jazzed up and like kind of like Hollywood? And literally we were early adopters. So we were using this with our students in a very early version. So Book Reader has innovated since. So you might be okay, like it's in 3 different languages with a recording, so what? But that was huge at the time. So knowing that pedagogically, what we were able to do here is put that student who is culturally and linguistically diverse on center stage. However, in order to accomplish our obligations as French teachers to teach the French curriculum, we said, we're going to put 3 of you in a group. One of you is going to be the leader. The leader is going to be the student that speaks a native language, a mother tongue other than English or French. You're the team lead, you're team captain. which let me tell you, changes the dynamic because oftentimes they are not team captain. Number two, there was another student who was the lead for the English piece of the book, and the third person was responsible for the French piece of the book. Now, how do those intersect? Just because they were a lead or a prime on a language doesn't mean that they were siloed and didn't have to collaborate. All of the students had to brainstorm in English together. The English lead would be responsible for writing in English. All of the students then had to translate this in French. So this was a beautiful opportunity for the multilingual learner who has another language other than English or French to refine and practice not only their English skills, but their French skills in helping with that translation. But they were a lead, so they did not have help from their peers writing the text in their native language. But
and I want to jump in, Julian.
Oh, can I just say one thing? That is where the book got brought home. That's what you're going to say? Okay, say it. I just want to make sure.
No. I just wanted to make sure you didn't miss that part.
Say it.
There was a component here where we were actually having parents come in physically to the school. It was hysterical. It was the best, though. It was unexpected. We had no idea the ripple effect it would have. But these were parents who were coming in and saying, hang on. We want to make sure I remember one parent, their child had written in Tamil and saying, we want to make sure there's no grammar errors because we're very, very proud. We're very proud that she's writing in Tamil and French and in English. So they were so invested. The families at this point were now invested, and it was really powerful. And I think that was, for me, a major light bulb moment was, we always say, what are kids taking home with them? What are they talking about? Well,
what did you do at school today?
What's that? Yeah, what did they do at school today?
Yeah. How many times as teachers have we said, like, oh, I wish that parent would be more involved, right? Mm-hmm. Because once I teach something at school, the kid goes home and it's all out the window because nobody's really helping to strengthen what that student learned at school. This is perfect, right? And nobody was sending letters home to parents saying, hey, your kid isn't doing what he needs to do in the right parts in this book. It was just the kids brought it home and they're like, look, mom and dad, look what we're doing. And the mom and dad are like, hold up, time out. This is really awesome. But we got to make sure that you actually do like the right thing, right? Like we got to make sure that you're using the right language pieces.
And you know what, John, it was really powerful because what would normally be the element that they shy away from, their native mother tongue, was the actual cherry on the top. It completely flipped the script. Julian made the great comment about, oh, what do you have in your lunch today? And they don't want to talk about it. There's that element of, I'm new, I'm different. Mm-hmm. Not anymore. It's what makes you celebrated.
And they became, again, a word I can't stand, they became the cool kids. So we had Russian as one of our languages as well, Cantonese, Mandarin. And it's funny, this was a very big, deep learning project. At the end of the day, like this was not just like a 2-period project. Like this took us like 2.5, 3 months. It was big. And we had parents saying, we have never had our languages and our cultures celebrated like that. But then Alexa and I were like, we got to make sure our assessment and evaluation is on point. So we conferenced with each of those students, made sure they could read us the script that was written in French, decode that script in French, translate that script in French, and give us some comprehension and some next steps of where it has to go in French. So the integrity of the assessment was in French, but the ripple effect was so much more powerful than anything academic. So,
Jumping on the assessment piece, we assessed in 2 ways, right? Because we assessed through the actual written, what was typed, and then the using the audio record button, what was spoken. So it's if you're worried about the assessment piece, oh my gosh, are you ever covering a lot of ground? Because you're covering your actual writing, so your sentence structure, your grammar, all of that, organizing ideas, generating ideas. But you're also talking about the actual voice component. And, you know, when we're teaching in French, that's a huge part, is the speaking component is massive. So we're talking pronunciation, expression, fluency, all of it. Right?
And just on Alexa's note there, it wasn't always the same lead who was responsible for reading in French. We made sure that every single group member, including the culturally linguistically diverse student who was in the French immersion program, they had to do a recording and read a recording that was written as well. John, should we take a moment to just let you listen to some of these recordings and just take a peek through?
Absolutely.
All right. So this was a book called La Belle Canada, The Beautiful Canada. And then you can see here, forgive me, I'm not sure if it's in Mandarin or in Cantonese, but the student was from China and they were the lead. So if we press play, we can listen to the translations, and then the student obviously hearing it, speaking in their native language. Now I'm just gonna, I think, John, do I have to click play audio share on the Zoom call to make sure that you can hear it? And that's gonna mute, that'll mute me then, right?
It shouldn't mute you, but it will allow you to push that play button, and I think you should be good. Oh. I think you're muted, Julian.
Yeah, you're muted.
Okay, I'm going to
I also can't see anything. I don't know if that's the same for you guys.
Yeah, it's we're back to the black screen again.
Oh my goodness. Am I a learning technologies consultant?
There it is.
Here we go. We can see picture.
And I think if you click the play button now, hopefully it should work.
La Belle Canada, The Beautiful Canada, 美丽的加拿大。La ville fameuse. La première chose que nous parlons de sont quoi tu peux faire dans une ville populaire. Des exemples de les villes populaires sont Toronto, Vancouver, Montréal et Calgary. Mais bien sûr, nous ne pouvons pas oublier Ottawa. Stop. 欢迎来到加拿大渥太华和 Saint Benedict Catholic School。我们将告诉您加拿大最好的东西。加拿大很棒很棒，所以有很多东西要谈。
So
I love it.
You can see it was 43 pages. Like that was a novel, okay, for what we did.
And might I add, that wasn't the expectation. We never said, oh, make a huge, huge, huge book. It was, here are the things we want you to include about Canada. And it wasn't that long. The criteria list wasn't that long. And it just goes to show you the engagement level, because they just kept writing and writing and writing and writing.
And that was 5 years ago. So if you have your kids on Book Creator now, they can do so much more. Like that was a very simple like user interface that you saw then. But one thing, I know we're almost at time, but one thing I want you to know, celebrating these kids' cultural and linguistic diversity and empowering them to become authors and leaders. Alexa and I were sitting in parent-teacher interviews, and we had parents, I kid you not, coming up with food for us that was cultural food that was unique to their country. And this student that I just played was actually a student in Alexa's class, and on parent-teacher interview night came up with a box of Chinese food because they owned one of the Chinese restaurants here in the city. But that wasn't the only example. Some of our Arabic students brought Arabic sweets for us. We had our students that spoke Tamil bring in their cultural food. We had had students with parents that work for Indigenous organizations that were so appreciative that we were talking about everything and then some, bringing us in cultural foods from the Algonquin Nation or from the Inuk people up north. So it really was a deep learning project. And I think, Alex, I forget, when we're presenting this, like how...
I know, I'm almost like reminiscing right now. I'm having a bit of a flashback. And, you know, I was just thinking, because we're really hyper-focused right now on the actual language component. And it makes me kind of have a parallel thought to the students that we had with learning disabilities. And we had students with output challenges, so where they were on assistive technology devices to help them actually not generate those ideas. They already have them. It was getting them out. And I would say Book Creator is a huge tool, an amazing tool to help with that, to empower with that. And like Julian said, it's to level up the playing field. And Julian, you always say this thing, and I always forget the wording. It's like, oh shoot, I'm gonna forget it now that I'm being recorded. I'm hypersensitive of that.
Student voice.
You know what? Never mind. But it's oh man, I'm so bummed I can't think about it. But it's all about leveling that playing field. And
what's essential for some is beneficial for all. Okay,
that's it. That's the one. It's what's essential for some. Say it again.
What's essential for some is beneficial for all.
And that's what Book Creator is. Period. The end. Game over. It's a game changer for those who really need it to feel that sense of accomplishment when writing, because they might be staring at, for some writing is a breeze. For others, you might as well be staring at Mount Everest, let's be honest, right? And for these kids, it was a breeze. Whether you're coming at it from a language perspective, whether you're coming at it from a special needs perspective, the entry points are just amazing, and they really lend themselves to every learner in the room.
And it's hard to summarize anything after that, but I have to say that I think this is a great exclamation point on the end of a wonderful Be an Author month here at Book Creator. And I think that this webinar just kind of highlights everything that we've been trying to say, and just that it doesn't matter your culture, your language, your academic level, your age, none of that matters, because in Book Creator, we all have a story. Right? We all have something to share. And whether it's just with my parents or with my community or with the world or with my school or whatever, we have stories to share. Somebody here has a story to share apparently too. But we all have something, right? Something has happened to all of us, right? At some point in our lives, and we can share that and we can benefit from that. And if we have, no stories in our schools that represent me or my language or my culture, then I can make them, right? And if there aren't stories, not just in the school, but in the bookstores and everywhere else, there's no books about what I am and where I grew up and all that good stuff, I can make that, right? And I think that is the real power here. And everything that you are doing with your students in Ottawa Catholic School Board is amazing, and we are just so appreciative that we could be partners with you on this, and really do appreciate you being here for this webinar. We appreciate everybody else being here. Julie and Alexa, I'll give you your final say if you want to say something else, but I just appreciate you being here and thank you so much.
I could go on forever. You might not want to give me the mic.
All right, mute. No, I'm just kidding.
I would honestly, like, a final thought is, I know we'd focused on student engagement, ease of use for students. The same can be said for teachers. And I know, speaking personally, when I was teaching grade 6 throughout the pandemic, and we were talking about, oh my gosh, how are we going to organize a graduation ceremony for our grade 6s when we can't even meet in person? That was at the time that the templates, Book Creator was really working fast during the pandemic, and you could just see there was something new happening all the time. And it was amazing because teachers, oh my gosh, we were teaching online, we were panicking, right? What can we do? How can we keep the engagement level up? But also, how can we, outside of the classroom, continue to do things for our kids that we typically would always do in person. So speaking of the graduation ceremony, you know, next thing you know, there's all these templates for how to create a digital graduation. And that's when the templates started rolling out. So while they're always looking at the students as the end user, there are constantly features being released that also help you as a teacher as well, do the best job that you can do for your students. So I just wanted to highlight that point as well, because there are some really amazing things for that.
Yes.
Yeah, I echo everything that Alexa said. Thank you for taking time out of your day wherever you are in the world. I think somebody said they were coming from Saudi Arabia on here, so hello. And yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. We highly recommend Book Creator, and yeah, level the playing field for your students and enjoy the ride, because it's been a fun one at Ottawa Catholic, and we know that you're sure to have the exact same experience on your end. So thank you for listening.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you most everybody for being here. My friends, thank you so much for helping with this. We appreciate it. Have a good night, everybody. The YouTube video will be there sometime tomorrow. So be safe out there. Happy bookmaking and happy end of Be an Author month. Well, we still got like 2 days left, so still plenty of time, because you know what, Be an Author month really should just be every day. So whatever.
Every day.
every month. So have a good one, everybody.